up, E3 members? Excited here in South Florida at Banyan Air Service at the #1 HondaJet dealer in the world, and I'm happy because I have Michael Gibson who's joining me, who's sold more HondaJets than anyone else.
Correct.
Which is pretty incredible. Now you're gonna show us a little bit about this HondaJet, which is sexy looking plane. But can you tell me a little bit how long you've been with Honda?
Sure, I've actually started almost 6 years ago. Brand new to aviation, knew nothing about aviation, but I've mastered the HondaJet.
Okay, I know the caveat, not a pilot, but so I'll try not to get too technical or these crazy questions, but we're kind of joking beforehand. You know, being an Air Force guy, I used to be able to trace an atom of fuel from the fuel truck out the exhaust. Things have changed a little bit because there are certain things that go wrong in aviation that you cannot control as a pilot, you know? That's something that's gonna be fixed on the ground. So there's only so much you need to know. There's a lot, but sometimes there's only so much. Can you tell me a little bit about the HondaJet inception and how it kind of came about?
Sure, basically in the late 80s, 1986, our ex-CEO of Honda Aircraft Company, who designed the HondaJet, came to the United States to go to Mississippi State University. From what I've heard and been told, basically because of their aeronautical and their aviation program, and he's an engineer and pretty much mastered and went to school there, and then designed the HondaJet. And over the periods of the 90s and early 2000s, it went from a design concept to actual factory in Greensboro, North Carolina, sitting on 133 acres. And that's where they manage and R&D and build every inch of this HondaJet.
It's wild to me because I didn't know that. I spent about 5 years in Columbus, Mississippi as an instructor pilot in the Air Force, but right down the road is Mississippi State. So the fact that it landed, or he landed in Mississippi State with their aeronautics program to design that, it's kind of a small world. It's not something I guess I would have assumed.
No, you're absolutely right. A long way from Tokyo to Mississippi.
Yeah, that's funny. And then can you tell me a little bit about the HondaJet hitting the flight line? And since it's hit the flight line, it's had a few variations.
Sure, it actually was certified in December of 2015. So the original HondaJet came out in 2016, 17, and 18. And in 2019, the HondaJet Elite came out. The Elite, same fuselage, same engines, basically had more options, a bigger fuel tank, upgraded interior, and a lot of extra features. And that's in 2019 where the Elite became popular.
Can you talk to me a little bit, because the standard fighter pilot answer is, it depends.
Right.
So that probably is applicable here, but rough ranges, what the difference is between the Elite, other models, and what can you expect to get out of this?
Sure, so the original HondaJet had 1,200 nautical mile range. It's got a 43,000 foot ceiling, and it goes 422 knots. Okay, when they came out with the Elite goes 1,437 nautical miles because it has a bigger fuel tank, same ceiling and same speed. When they came out with the Elite, they thought about all the original owners that had 3 years of original planes and came out with an APMG, Advanced Modification Performance package, that you can upgrade the original to what I call the almost elite. Okay, it gave it a 1,300 nautical range, it gave it a 200-pound useful load increase, and it made some changes to the aircraft. So now we have the original, the APMG, and the Elite in the market. Last year, they came out with the Elite S. The Elite S had another 200-pound useful load increase and had some extra features like ACARS to be able to text your clearance, and Datacom 3, and just some nose wheel steering upgrades and a few things like that.
All right, we'll definitely talk about all those. I know for those who aren't familiar with ACARS, if they're not an airline pilot, most people haven't been exposed to ACARS. Having ACARS, being able to get the data message of your clearance or a radio change, whatever it might be,
Sure.
is a pretty nice thing. It's not widely circulated in the United States yet. There's just a few sectors that are bringing it up. In my other job, that's what I see and use quite a bit, and it's a nice feature to have.
From what I've heard, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not being used a lot here. Now, we do deliver HondaJets all over the world, so the CPLCD,
right,
which is being used in other parts of the world, and now with the ACARS here, a lot of pilots are looking forward to that.
Well, the safety aspect that adds, I think, is it's probably recognized by a lot, but it doesn't get a whole lot of attention because I'll fly all over the world and having CPLDC, having that text message of the radio change or the altitude change or the navigational change sent to you in a readable format versus what'd they say, how'd they say. I've talked in some other instances where language barriers can definitely be a factor, and where you might say, I understand or understood or copy that. Those idiosyncrasies don't translate across different languages, and you can have some things that get pretty sketchy. So that technology, as it's working its way into the private side of the house outside of commercial aviation, is pretty cool to see. And the 200-pound bump in useful load, we always joke, what's the worst thing you can put on an airplane? A pound. So being able to bump up and add an extra person or extra baggage, I imagine that's a huge selling point.
It's huge. So when you go from the original to the APMG, you go 200 pounds. When you go from APMG to the Elite, you go 200 pounds. You go from the Elite to the Elite S, you go 200 pounds. And we'll talk in a few minutes about the Elite II that we just announced last week, which goes up 400 pounds.
Wow, yeah, so, and then you mentioned the service ceiling being 43,000 feet. For those that don't spend a lot of time up high, getting into the 40s is usually a pretty nice thing to be able to do because there's not that many people that can do it. So being able to go point A to point B without having to hit all these different waypoints or getting rerouted with traffic is a huge fuel saver, is a huge time saver. So having that high service ceiling is a pretty nice thing, I would imagine.
No, you're absolutely right. And above, from what I've been told, above the weather, less delays, especially coming back to South Florida. And you're out of, like you said, and your fuel burn is a lot less, which makes it a great, the HondaJet, while we're talking on that, at 430 is going to burn around 600 pounds for both sides.
Do you know what it would burn down low, like at a lower altitude?
800, maybe a little bit more is what I've heard, but we always say, you want to go to 430. And most of the time, that's where we go. The good thing about the HondaJet is it will climb at 4,100 feet a minute. So at 25 minutes on a nice ISA day, you can get to 430.
And that's a pretty fast climb rate. I did joke, like the fuel burn, like in the F-16, we would try to get up into the high 40s going cross country, because you would see a significant performance increase from burning 70,000 pounds an hour down low, so slightly more than a HondaJet, but to 10,000 pounds an hour up high. Wow. And that can start adding up big time when you're talking dollars. Passenger-wise, again, I know probably it depends, but if we're looking at an average passenger cargo complement,
well, the HondaJet is single pilot certified, and so if you fly single pilot, which most people do, you're going to have a single pilot plus 6 or 7 if you have the belted lav. And belted lav is only available on the Elite, Elite S, or Elite II. The original plane does not have a belted lav.
So belted lav meaning
we could put somebody in timeout in the bathroom.
Yeah, and sit there and my ultimate penalty box.
There we go. But actually, you'll see when we go on in a few minutes that there's a lot of room back there. It's actually a big, comfortable area.
Perfect. Well, before we do that, can you kind of walk me around? Let's do a little show and tell of the jet.
Of course. Well, the HondaJet is the most modern jet out there. It's a new clean sheet design. First of all, this is a carbon fiber, one solid piece carbon fiber aircraft fuselage.
Is that all manufactured in North Carolina? It's like everything is done in North Carolina?
The carbon fiber fuselage is made in South Carolina by the same company that makes like Boeing 777 and other carbon fiber aircrafts. But this whole fuselage is one solid piece.
No kidding.
It's while we're on it, it's actually all the HondaJets are painted by robots. So you can touch this one, and this plane is already a 2019. So it gets the precise thickness of paint on the whole aircraft, which is, again, from what I've been told, the only robot in aviation that's painting aircrafts.
Yeah, I saw the 787 facility where they were painting the 787. It's all done by hand, which, to me, it's pretty wild to see such a large aircraft get painted by hand and with detail. But yeah, that.
So you've got, what's really unique about it is you can see the design in the fuselage, the natural laminar flow, and every inch of this fuselage was designed to reduce drag, be more fuel efficient, and to have a natural laminate flow. Some of the things everybody always asks about the shark teeth on there, that's the electric windshield. to keep the windshield
Can
de-iced.
we talk, I mean, on that, can we talk icing? Is this certified to fly in icing conditions?
Yes, it is, and great question. So right here we have an automatic ice detector. What's great about the HondaJet is it will sense when it needs to turn on. It senses the ice, it turns itself on and lets you as the pilot know, I just turned on the de-icing. You don't have to do anything.
Which is really nice to have that. Again, modern technology, embracing that, because the planes I came from flying, that was not the case if they had icing protection at all. And if they did, you usually had to make the input to actually activate the system. I assume engine, similar type technology?
The engine is the same. It's going to turn on your bleed air on your engines, and the same with your tail. Your tail has what we call EMOD, electric magnetic, like little hammers that keep the ice off the tail. But what's amazing is it's all automated. So even your lighting is automated. There's no lighting switches in the cabin.
Really?
So the HondaJet knows when you turn on the taxiway, it turns on the lights. It knows when you come above or under 10,000 feet with your beacon light. All your lighting is automated. It knows where it is at all times.
Well, being single pilot operations, having that co-pilot, if you will, to back you up is super helpful. My mother-in-law would hate it. She's one that still hates automatic headlights. I don't understand why. It's like, embrace the technology.
Well, here's what I always tell everybody. It's a difference between an iPhone and a flip phone.
Yeah.
And this is the iPhone, and it's giving you all the extra features of modern technology. So we've got the nose wheel steering, which is unique for the Honda. It actually can turn the plane 60 degrees. So we can turn in our own wingspan, which is a great feature to have as well.
I think a lot of people that go in and out of FBOs, especially if you're, I would imagine, operating single pilot, if it's a well-established field, that might not be that big of a deal.
Correct.
I've flown into some places where, one, you might have to do a 180-degree turn on the runway to get into a spot. You might be put in a weird spot on the field and have to get out. Being able to turn with inside your own wingspan, not many planes can do that.
I couldn't tell you where, but we were somewhere in the southeast. It was about 2 years ago, and we landed on a runway, single runway, where we actually had to pull over and fill our own plane up, which to me was unique. Right. I do that with a car. Didn't think I had to do that with a plane.
Those places still exist.
But we had to turn around within our own wingspan and take off from the same runway.
Yeah, and again, being able to do that, you never know when you might need that. And I imagine people who are wanting to fly this, it might be same spot, point A, point B, point C, point D, but again, depending, you might land yourself a spot that you're filling your own fuel tank in a HondaJet, you know.
Well, you can, and the good news is you can go almost anywhere. I mean, the HondaJet's going to require a 3,500 foot runway, but every pilot I know wants at least 4,000. Yep. But it also opens up a lot more places you can go.
It does. 3,500 feet just seems so short to me, you know. But that's nice to be able to get in and get out.
Yep. You'll see in here is our first storage. We've got two different baggage or storage areas. This is the first one. So in here, it's actually 9 cubic feet, and you can put 200 pounds in the nose here as storage.
Yeah, I see that, which is awesome. Do the other models, is this
all the same?
All the same here, it just changes the weight.
Correct, you got the same fuselage. The only difference is going to be the weight and the limitations of the features and options, but they'll all have a nose and a rear baggage area.
Maybe we can see it when we get in there, but I would imagine too when it comes to weight and balance, I'm guessing the HondaJet has some technology to help the pilot out when it comes to weight and balance.
Correct. I mean, the new Elite II, from what I've been told, is coming off our assembly line in the next month or two, and that solved any CG. Now, if from what we have one pilot who I think weighs 130 pounds, and if he's flying on a full fuel tank, we usually tell him, or he'll put his bag in the front.
Some small things like that. I did see oxygen. So can you tell me about the oxygen system in here, a little bit of what it's capable of, or the servicing that goes into it?
The main thing is that the oxygen is just going to be like, as I tell everybody, like Delta Airlines. It's going to be automatically pressurization. While we're on the pressurization, not to change the topic, but the pressurization of the HondaJet at 430 is going to be around 8,000 feet.
Which I've had this conversation, the F-16, again, to draw a comparison, uses a pressure differential at altitude, and it would not be uncommon to be up at 48, 49,000 feet. but it tries to schedule to 8,000 foot cabin pressure into a certain altitude. And that's usually around like 20,000 feet that the pressure difference is going to increase. But in the 40s, you might be sitting at a cabin pressure of 14 or 15,000 feet, which if you do that for an extended period of time, wears on your body. Even, most airliners, I think 8,000 feet is kind of the industry standard. So being able to be up in the 40s and have your cabin pressure at 8,000 feet allows you to have some comfort and get to a spot, not just be completely dragging or have some weird side effects from it as well.
Right.
Up in the nose. I imagine there's some stuff up in the nose.
You've got your radar in the nose. And that's pretty much all that I'm aware of or that I talk about as far as.
With the radar in the nose, so that's actually throwing energy out there, seeing what's in front of you. Is there anything else in the HondaJet? Does it have like Sirius XM NEXRAD radar as well?
We have both. We have weather radar and then you have XM. Now everything's an option, so some have one or the other. Of course, the XM being land-based in the US, so if the plane's going overseas, it probably won't have XM. But most of the pilots like both.
Well, I was say having both, if you have the ability to have both, and there's some guys with thick glasses, right? They can get into radar theory, et cetera. But flying around the Southeast, in particular in the summertime with a few thunderstorms here and there, or wintertime when you get these embedded thunderstorms, having the, no kidding, radar in the nose, looking out there, but having the Sirius XM or the NEXRAD radar that's getting pumped in the jet, being able to compare those two pictures because they will look different.
Sure.
Having that information available just makes you a safer pilot.
Exactly, that's what they like, exactly. So. The main differences as well is, again, you have your complete redundancy. You've got your static pitot tube, your AOA indicator, everything all built into one. You've got redundancy on your ice detector on both sides. And as you can see, again, when you stand back here, the design of the HondaJet is so unique. All LED lighting and a very simple process.
It's very sleek. I mean, it looks good,
Here on both sides is basically your battery doors. To disconnect the battery, Honda says leave the batteries alone, but I know some pilots like disconnecting them. But
got some old school.
Honda will just say leave it. Again, modern technology.
It's probably makes more sense to obviously listen to the engineers and what they have to say about it. So
sure. Well, the other thing is we'll go back to the other side and I'll show you the wing. An interesting piece. This wing is all aluminum. It is made out of one block of 2,000-pound aluminum piece that turns this into a 70-pound aluminum wing.
All CNC. So that's kind of wild. I've seen other instances with composite planes. I'd imagine the wing probably gets CNC'd and milled, and then that gets plopped in the middle.
Right. Well, you've got one solid wing on each side that connects.
So are they two separate wings, or is it one?
Correct. Two separate.
Okay. And I imagine that we're keeping a lot of fuel in these wings.
Yeah, actually, you're going to have 5 tanks in the HondaJet, and I'll show you when we go around. It's a single hole fueling. You don't fuel each wing. So you have one point to fill, and it will gravity feed to the center and then to the wings.
Okay. Single point refueling.
Single hole. They don't call it, you don't need a special nozzle.
Okay.
So just regular single hole, but regular nozzle.
Okay, gotcha. That's like the comparison between single point refueling and over the wing refueling, because most planes get refueled or they have a cap in the wing.
So we say it saves a lot of time. If the plane was completely empty, which it wouldn't be, it's about a 10-minute, you could fill up the plane in one location, which I'll show you. What's unique and what everybody asks about is the pylons for the engines.
It looks a little bit different than most planes people see. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
So that's one of the main designs of the HondaJet. So the over-the-wing engine mount is designed, and it's actually designed to reduce drag, which it does about 10%. It's made it more fuel efficient. And the extras are, it's made more room in the cabin by not having pieces of the engine in there, and quieter cabin. It is huge. I can actually hold my phone and watch a movie without earplugs. Yeah. It's very, very quiet in the cabin.
Having that separation alone with the vibrations and things like that, I can definitely imagine that's a lot quieter.
Sure. So you got one solid piece doing that, and it's just amazing, the technology. A lot of people say, Well, it doesn't look stable, but I always use the terminology that commercial airlines are hanging from the bottom.
Right. It's just a couple bolts.
Right, same difference.
Most people don't realize, I mean, obviously the incredible technology that goes into it and the engineering behind it. I keep jumping back to the F-16. I think most people would think, I mean, that plane can pull 9 Gs, and if you have 2,000 pound bombs or 500 pound bombs hanging on the wing, and you pull 5 Gs with it, I mean, you're putting a lot of strain on it.
Yeah.
And there's only 4 little bolts holding that thing on. So, you know, it's pretty impressive what aerospace engineers are able to come up with and figure out, you know.
So over here you'll see our luggage area where you can actually put 400 pounds in the back cargo here.
Does the weight change? So I know the different models with the weight increase. Is that just overall, or
it's overall. So the original, the APMG, the Elite and Elite S is all 400.
Okay.
The new Elite II that's coming out next month that we just announced will take this up to 550 pounds.
That's a big space.
It is. You can put golf clubs back there, put whatever.
Probably a lot of clubs that can go in there. So yeah, that's perfect.
Now it's not pressurized. However, we have had bottles of wine, and what we normally do is we put it up against the back there because we haven't had any problems with it.
It's not pressurized, so I imagine not temperature controlled back here at all either. So, all right. I did a lot of flying, again, in the high 40s with unpressurized travel pods. Things survive up there, which is kind of impressive.
Yeah, it's unique. Okay, so here, this is a speed brake. What's unique is most speed brakes are usually on the wings.
Right.
Honda's put it here and it will open up like a clam. What's really good is it's, you know, used up if ATC says slow down, but it doesn't vibrate the whole plane and you barely can tell that it's been open.
Yeah, most planes I've flown with speed brakes, which, man, it's every plane. You know when the speed brakes are open, which is a good thing sometimes if you inadvertently deploy the speed brakes, but that's the first time I've seen it in a spot like this.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I mean, again, we don't feel it, and it's not going to vibrate the plane, and you don't even tell the difference, but it will slow you down.
You know, guys, because speed brakes, I imagine this is probably at high speed, it's pretty effective. Most speed brakes, the slower you get, the less effective they are.
Correct, yeah. It's used, again, I've only seen it used if ATC says slow down, but we don't use it for landing or anything. It's basically just slow down in the air.
Yep.
This is our single hole fueling. Again, not single point, just single hole. And it actually gets fuel. It's going to gravity feed into the 3 tanks in the belly and then the 2 wings. Of course, with the Garmin inside, you can control and move it and see exactly everything about where the correct. And then down here is where you would service the lav. The HondaJet, which I'll show you, has a full functional externally serviced lav like the airlines. So you're not carrying a pot through the plane. You'll see a sink with running water, skylights in the restroom. It's amazing.
Yeah, not something you typically see probably at this price point, I would imagine.
Correct. You're not going to see an externally serviced lav in any plane under $10 million.
Gotcha. And I know we've already kind of talked about the engines. We just briefly hit on the takeoff distance, but while we're standing by a motor, for a pilot, takeoff and landing distance is always a really important thing, right? Can you talked about 3,500 feet is about the runway length takeoff?
Right, the actual books will say 3,500 feet. We don't use that. I couldn't really tell you where we take off. I know that they rotate somewhere around 106, 107, but of course that varies on the weight, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. What about landing? Is that the same? Like what side you need a 4,000 foot runway to get
Correct.
in?
I've landed 4,000 feet is what every pilot says, nothing smaller. The only time they might want longer than 4,000 if it's wet and they're not familiar with it.
Yeah, that's where that it depends answer comes in. But yeah, wet, icy runway, winds are weird, unfamiliar. Yeah, all those things start adding hopefully distances here.
But the HondaJet lands and takes off amazing, very quickly and very simple from what I've been in the front right seat probably 400 or 500 hours over the last 5 or 6 years, and it's just amazing how the technology flies the HondaJet.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue. Can we jump up in the cockpit and take a look inside?
Let's do it.